Nick, it is so good to see you. We are talking
Hey.
retirement milestones today, the ages that trigger big financial decisions. So, there are a handful of ages that can dramatically shape your retirement strategy, affecting everything from taxes to healthcare. Some dates unlock benefits, others create costly mistakes if missed. So, we're going to go in order here, starting with 59 and a half. This is when you are able to take withdrawals from your retirement accounts without that early withdrawal penalty, and you are eligible for the in-service rollover. Tell me about both.
Yeah, so that in-service rollover, that's something that a lot of people they don't know about. So we'll get to that in a minute. I call this like the penalty-free birthday. Before you're 59 and a half, when you have those IRAs and pre-tax accounts, the IRS is basically staying there at a toll booth saying, if you take any money out, you got to pay, and then it's an extra 10% on top of that,
Right.
what they call the 10% federal excise tax. So again, that's on IRAs, 401ks, things like that, pre-tax accounts. When you take money out before 59 and a half, you get taxed and then penalized. And so once you hit 59 and a half, though, you still have the tax. That's the thing. That never goes away. It's just that 10% federal excise tax that does go away. So it's your penalty-free birthday. But then you also mentioned if you're still working, you have this what's called an in-service rollover.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a 401k, the myth is that when you got a 401k, you can't move it until you leave your job, and that's not the case. For most companies, the lion's share of companies out there, when you hit 59 and a half, you can do what's called an in-service rollover. And what that basically means is you're able to take that money in that 401k, pick it up and roll it over into your own IRA, and that is a tax-free move from one place to the other. Now, why would you want to do that? If we think about your 401k, you have few choices with it. There's not many choices. You're almost
Right.
handcuffed with this money. So think about it as, do you remember those old TVs with the rabbit ears?
I do. Are you
You
trying to
probably
make me
remember
sound
seeing
old
them,
here,
hearing
Nick?
about them, seeing. I mean, I'm dating myself maybe a little bit. I can remember my parents had a wagon, and they could actually put the TV in the wagon. That should tell you something. It was like the wagon from Vacation with
Right.
Chevy Chase. They put the TV in there, and then you put the rabbit ears, and then you kept trying to turn it so you could figure out where the stations were. And as you kept moving through cities, it would go staticky, it would go bad, but
Yeah.
you could only ever pick up two, three, four stations. So think about it as a 401k is like rabbit ears. You don't get many options. You get 4, 5, 6, 10, 12 different options. You don't have that many options. So the benefit to moving the money out is you can move the money into something that would be like cable, where you have hundreds and hundreds of different options, hundreds of channels that you can move that money into, as opposed to leaving it in a 401k where you're handcuffed and you don't have many choices. And so it really can help people if you're, say, 59 and a half and you're going to retire at 65. You can take that money and start creating your own income plan early instead of having to wait until the day you retire
Right.
and then get started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that analogy. That's a great way to understand it. All right, now let's talk about age 62. This is when you are first eligible to claim Social Security, but should
Right.
you?
Well, it's the earliest. It may not be the best. So claiming at 62, what that does is it permanently reduces your benefit by about 30%, just like you have here on the chart, compared to waiting until what's called your full retirement age, which is 67 for most people. So when you take Social Security at 62, I look at it as it's like opening Christmas presents on December 15th. Yes, you can do it, but Santa hasn't been there yet, and so you're missing out on a lot of stuff. So you can get there sooner, but there's just a lot less benefits. So think about it in dollars and cents. Your full retirement benefit might be $2,000 a month, but if you claim at 62, it's only 1,400. So that's like a $7,200 per year difference. Over 10 years, that's 72 grand. And those reductions are for life. And also don't forget, this is another misleading thing. People will think, well, I can turn on Social Security at 62, so I just will and I'll continue working. The problem is there's something called the Social Security Earnings Test. I would recommend people to look that up. Social Security Earnings Test. And what that means is if you make over $24,400, for every $2 you make in Social Security, you got to give $1 back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's if you're over 62 and not quite at full retirement age. So you keep working, you bring in Social Security, and then you get a nice little letter saying Social Security needs you to pay some of those benefits back because you made too much. Again, you just want to be careful and know these things. Social Security, by and large, is one of those few paychecks in America where the boss is actually giving you a raise for showing up late.
Right.
So when you show up late to taking Social Security, you actually are getting better benefits. So you got to look at your longevity. You got to look at spousal benefits, because the longer you let your benefit go, the more benefit can pass on to your surviving spouse. And also look at how it fits into your overall income strategy. Because once you kick that number on, once you turn on Social Security, if you do it at 62, you're locking in those benefits for life, and it's hard, and you can't flip back once it's done. They give you a little window to make a change, but then if you don't, that's kind of locked in there.
One of the most important decisions you will make in retirement. Okay, next we have age 65. This is when you are eligible for Medicare, and this is a date you do not want to miss. Why is that?
Well, because they give you a window, and if you miss that window, there's penalties. So how it basically works, what's that?
For life, a penalty for life.
Yeah, right. So the rule is you have basically a 7-month window. So when you hit 65, you have the 3 months before 65, the month of 65, and then the 3 months after. So you have the 7-month window to get on to Medicare. And if you don't, then Medicare is going to increase the premiums that you pay. And they're not going to just do it for 1 year or 1 month. They're going to do it for the rest of your life because you missed it at the upfront. And that would be, to me, like trying to get on a flight at the airplane, and then you miss it, the plane leaves, and you still got to pay more costs to catch up with the plane. And then those costs last for the rest of your life. So just really be mindful of that. But the thing is, if you still are working for a company and you have what's called creditable coverage, and usually what that means is if your company has over 20 employees, but you want to make sure with your HR department if they have creditable coverage. If they do, you can still stay on your work plan and not have to go on Medicare at 65. And still, as soon as you stop working then and you're off the group plan, then you do have a timely window where you have to get on it before, again, you're penalized. So you do want to check on those things, but just don't discount the fact that I'll just turn on Medicare whenever I get around to it, and then find out that those penalties stick with you for the rest of your life, which is, I don't even know who made that rule, but they should really be taken over and raked over to coals because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one you don't want to miss. Okay, number 4, age 70 and a half. This is an important age for anyone who is charitably inclined. Why is that?
Well, now don't discount this, because a few years ago, what people thought, they heard that 70 and a half, and they mixed it with what's called the required minimum distribution age. So the old required minimum distribution age before 70 and a half, or before 2020, was 70 and a half. You had to wait until you were 70 and a half, and at 70 and a half, you had to take minimum distribution money out of your IRAs or 401ks, or else you were penalized. They've now moved that to 73. I think we're going to talk about that here in a second.
Yeah, next.
But a lot of people still think minimum distributions are 70 and a half because we heard it for so long. That's not the case. What you're referring to, that 70 and a half, is if you're charitably inclined, is you can do what's called a qualified charitable distribution. And that just means that you're using your IRA to directly pay a charity. And when you do that, you're taking money out of that IRA, let's say $10,000, you send it directly to the charity, there's no taxes. It's one of the few times that the IRS actually rewards generosity. So it's a really great benefit. Instead of sitting at church or wherever you do your charitable giving, whether it's St. Jude's or Folds of Honor, some incredible groups, and you usually just cut a check and give it to them. Why? Have it come out of your IRA. They get the same amount of money that you're going to do, but now it's tax-free.
Right.
On that giving. So it's a great benefit to do. And you can start that up at 70 and a half, even though you don't have to take your minimum distribution until 73.
Right. The way I say it is, if you're putting money in the collection plate, there is a more tax efficient way to do it, for sure.
Yes, there is.
Okay. Last, we have age 73. You just touched on this. This is when most of us are required to start taking those required minimum distributions.
Right. So you can see here, that there's different dates depending on when you were born, but for most people now it's age 73. I call required minimum distributions forced withdrawals, because it's basically the government saying, we know how much you have in these pre-tax accounts. You never paid taxes on them before, so now we're going to force you to pull money out so you have to pay taxes. And it starts at 73, like we were talking about. And it's really on traditional IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, all those pre-tax accounts. I got a sheet here. I did some chicken scratch just to kind of get an idea. Because one of the questions we get a lot, Aaron, is, well, then how much do I have to take out? And if you had, say, $1 million in a pre-tax account, IRAs, 401ks, you just add it all up. At age 73, it works out to about 3.77% that you have to take out. So that means on $1 million, you'd have to take out $37,700 out.
Wow.
To satisfy your minimum distribution. And you can't get away with it. You can't say, well, hey, that's going to push me over a threshold. I don't want to do that. They're going to make you do it anyway. But here's the rub. I've always said, and you've heard me say this in other interviews, that as you get older, your taxes tend to go higher. And here's why I say that. Because if you were age 80, now remember at 73, you only had to take out $37,700. At age 80, the same person who has $1 million has to take out 4.95% of their money. That means that they have to pull out $49,500 of required minimum distribution, whether they want to or not. So the government is forcing you to pull out more and more and more as you get older, which is why a lot of people, if they aren't planning right, will end up having higher taxes as they move through retirement, not less taxes. And you can see that here's the brackets, right? The federal tax brackets. You might be on the cusp of a 24 bracket. Look at that 24 bracket. It goes from 24% to 32. But let's say that you don't want to get to 32%. You want to stay in the 24% bracket. Makes sense. But if the government is forcing you to take out minimum distributions and you don't have a choice, then because of the planning and where your money's invested, you've moved into this next bigger bracket and there's nothing you can do about it. Right. So proper planning means you got to handle this sooner and know what your taxes are, a lot sooner. That can mean looking at Roth conversions. That can mean looking at the taxation of your income planning. That can mean proper tax diversification of your investments. So we want to look at all those things when you get 73.
Right. No, and I'll just mention one more important point on your note. Somebody who's 80, the likelihood of losing a spouse, and then you're filing taxes as a single filer, as opposed to marrying filing jointly, which is going to push you into another bracket too.
I've seen this time and time again, where people think I'm going to get lower taxes as I get older, and then all of a sudden they lose a spouse, like you were saying. I saw one married, they were paying $1,000 in taxes a year. But once the husband passed away, taxes went from $1,000 to $6,000 a year. Yeah. Now, ordinarily you might think about that. Well, that's not that big of a deal, Nick. $1,000 to $6,000 doesn't seem like that big of a deal. I want you to look at it as percentages. Right. Look at it as percentages. That's a 6x increase in your taxes. So if now you're paying $10,000 in taxes, let's say right now, and 6 times that because of losing a spouse, now you're paying 60. Now we're talking a lot bigger deal. So it's why you got to be mindful of this stuff.
Yeah, no, proactive planning is key, certainly. Well, I know that you are Johnny on the spot, making sure that your clients don't miss any of these retirement milestones. So if somebody would like to sit down with you, make sure that they are prepared for all of these important dates, and again, proactively planning to reduce their tax burden in retirement. What's the best way to reach you?
So our calendar is actually up on our website. Every visit, we recommend setting up a 15-minute strategy session call. Real low key, no pressure. It's just an opportunity to see what's going on, see if we're a fit, see if there's anything we can do to help. And so you can go on our website, group10financial.com, and you'll see a link for our online calendar. You can go there and click a link and set up a 15-minute call with one of our team. And we can see what we can do to help you and make sure that you're not missing these milestones, which obviously, like we talked about, can be really costly.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. Nick, thank you so much.
Great being with you.